I think the thing to remember is that emotions are relatable. There will be someone out there who reads that and goes, oh my God, that's how I feel. Like either you've put it into words or that's exactly how I would put it too. I could talk about player agency for like hours because I think it's the thing that makes games the most interesting. It's the thing nothing else has. That's one of the things with branching dialogues is it spirals out of control. It just gets like exponentially bigger the more stuff branches.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Quest Markers. On this show, we talk about video games and the people behind them. I'm Marina. I'm a video game composer, vocalist, sound designer, audio engineer, and your host. And today, I am so excited to have Kate Gray with us. Kate is a games writer, narrative designer, and worked in journalism as well, who has worked on games such as Hello Kitty Island Adventure, Moonstone Island, and Dimensional Double Shift, and has also written for Nintendo Life, Rock Paper Shotgun, Vice, Kotaku, Rolling Stone, and many, many more. Kate has also been a video producer, a show host, a script writer, a streamer, and a community manager. So Kate, you have done it all. Today, we'll be focusing the conversation on games writing and narrative design, and this episode will be timestamped with the topics we cover, so feel free to jump around if you're watching the recording. But if you're here with us on Twitch, we do have emote-only chat on for the duration of the recording, and we'll open it up for Q&A at the very end. I'm so excited for today's conversation. And Kate, before we dive in, how are you staying hydrated?
As always, I drink tea. I drink like 5 to 10 cups of tea a day, and I really hope that counts.
Of course it counts. It's water.
Yeah.
People will argue that it's a diuretic, so it doesn't hydrate you.
It's not. I'm fine. I haven't died yet.
I'm pretty sure it hydrates us.
Yeah, it's just leaf water.
Yeah, exactly.
Hot, I guess.
Exactly. It's fine.
I do also drink water, in case you're worried. But it's not.
I was a little bit concerned. Yeah, true. Well, you could do what I do. So I've got my coffee. I'm legally obligated to say that I'm drinking coffee. I am drinking coffee. I'm drinking iced coffee, so I put it in this thing so that it doesn't sweat. I recently bought like an ice cube maker, but that makes massive ice cubes. So I just have a massive ice cube in here. But I have electrolyte water.
Ooh.
So I try to stay extra hydrated throughout the day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like water maxing out here. If that's what that's called. I feel like I'm trying to say cool lingo and sounding like a dweeb.
No, I love it.
Wow.
I love it. How do you I'm not even gonna ask that question actually. Because we're gonna get off topic right away, real quick.
This is the first topic. Oh no.
The first topic. Kate, tell us about yourself.
Oh God, that's a big question. Okay, hi. I'm Kate. I'm all the things that Marina said. I started as a journalist. I technically still am one on the side. I've been doing that for like 10 years. Maybe longer. I started in like 2014, so yeah, a little bit longer than that. And then I moved to Canada. In case you can't tell, I'm British. And I moved to Canada in like 2017 and moved into community management and game dev. And then sort of in between, I've been doing all the other things like, what does it say? Producer, video producer, show host. Yeah, I worked at GameSpot for like 9 months. And
Hell yeah.
Xbox UK, I did a bunch of their videos. Like I was on like the Xbox homepage a lot, and that was a really weird time in my life. And that was only for like 6 months. And then I learned to stop quitting jobs really fast. And now I make video games. I write video games primarily, but I also do some game dev in my free time. Learning to program right now. That's fun, horrifying, scary. Yeah. It's been a while since I've learned anything. It's not a good feeling because you're like, why am I bad at this? I'm good at other things. I don't like being bad at this. So that's where I'm at with that. Should I cover non-game topics about me? I don't know.
Whatever you would like to share. My next question is, and maybe this can segue us into the next question, is tell us about your path getting into game dev, which you've already kind of started going into. So
Mm.
maybe that's our segue.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like my path getting into journalism was part of it. So just briefly, when I was at university, I wrote for the university newspaper and they had a game section. And so I did write for that. And then I was like, this is great. What if I could do this for money? And then like I interviewed for one place and got it, which is insane. Like that's not,
That's
I feel like it's
amazing.
a really unhelpful path because it's like, well, just interview once and you'll get it. And that is not the case. Like I was very lucky. Like there were like 650 people applied for that job.
Wow.
And I got it despite not knowing a whole lot about video games. At least I didn't at the time. I was like, hey. But I think this is an applicable tip. One of the reasons I got the job was because they were like, write a piece. And it was about the time Animal Crossing New Leaf had come out. So I started writing a piece like,
Yes.
Animal Crossing New Leaf is a really good game. And then I was like, what am I doing? Everyone's going to be writing that. I'm going to write something stupid. So I wrote a piece about a game I made up that's like a Super Mario game that has like smell-o-vision. And I was like, no one's going to be writing this. And I was right. Like, it made me stand out because they probably looked at it and they were like, what? What the hell? Like, why is she? This isn't a real game. And yeah, as part of the interview, I had to do a quiz about like Nintendo stuff. And I didn't
Wow.
know a lot like growing up. I was probably younger than a lot of other people applying for the job. I was like 22. So like I had a Nintendo 64, but anything before that, no idea. Anything that wasn't Zelda, no idea. So they were asking me questions about like
Just like me.
F-Zero. And I was just like, the only thing I know about F-Zero is there's like a guy called, no, Falcon? No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes? Okay, I
Yeah,
wasn't
Captain
even
Falcon,
sure now. And I was like,
I think. Now
at
I'm
the
not
time,
sure.
I was just like, I think this is a thing, but I'm just going to draw pictures because I'm pretty sure I haven't got the job. So I just drew a bunch of pictures and made stupid jokes. And I guess that's what they were looking for, someone who, even if they don't know something, can still make it interesting and fun. So it worked out. Like, don't be afraid to be like a little wacky if you're going for a writing job, because like as long as the game is wacky, right? Like if you're hiring for like a game like Bug Snacks, that's going to stand out. If you're going for like
Mm.
Last of Us and you're like, lol, they'll be like, what are you doing?
Mm.
Get out. But that's the writing I do, so it worked out for me. And then from there, it was a lot of meeting people either at parties or conventions. So go to parties a lot. It's really unhelpful. I'm sorry.
No,
But
you're good. That's
yeah.
fine. I think a lot of it is that people want to work with people that they know and
Mhm.
trust, right? And
Yeah.
so one's immediate kind of professional circle kind of comes into play there as well.
Yeah. And also being like friendly. Not
Mm.
like weird or like very obviously networking, but being like friendly and just treating other people like other people, not like someone who might hire you or someone you're trying to get something from. It's really obvious when you
Mm.
want something from somebody.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
I just
I
wanted
think
friends.
yeah, no, but I feel like so much of like when I talk to colleagues about
Mm,
or just devs in the industry and networking comes up, everyone's like, just make friends. Like there's really cool
yeah.
people in the industry and you could make some really cool friends and going in and just going and having a laugh with someone or having a coffee with someone like is also just
Yeah.
enriching for life. So, not everything to your point, it's I don't know, not everything is about like networking. It's like maybe
Yeah.
you'll just meet cool people and make cool friends.
And now we have friends. Yay.
Yay.
It worked out. Ah,
I love that.
yeah.
Okay, so wrote for the university paper,
Mhm,
landed your first gig in journalism, and
mhm.
then what was the rest of the journey into dev?
Um, well, when I moved to Canada, I was technically freelance at the time, like in between jobs, but in the kind of freelancy way where you're like, I'm technically employed. sort of self-employed. Yeah. And I was living in London. I was like, why am I living in London doing freelance work? I could do freelance work anywhere. They don't need me to be in the office. I've always wanted to live in Canada. I'm going to move to Canada. And so I first went to a place called Stugan, which is a Swedish game development acceleration camp. I wasn't there to do game dev. I was there to be the videographer and to be kind of like the host and interview all of them. And that's actually where I met my partner. He's also streaming right now. So we're rivals. Don't go and watch his stream. Watch this one. But I also met a bunch of other game devs there and kind of got immersed in the game dev life more than I had before. And I was like, oh, this is way more fun. What am I doing? It was so creative and inspiring, and everyone was just lovely and interesting. And also, I was like, move to Canada. So I moved to Canada, interviewed at a couple of places. One was a studio I don't think exists anymore, who needed a communities manager who spoke French. And I was like, I speak French. Quickly realized that I did not speak that good French. But I was like, I'll pick it up. I'll figure it out as I go along. But it was just very intense. So I don't know how well I did at that particular job, but I also worked at Clever Endeavor, who make Ultimate Chicken Horse.
Oh, that game is so fun.
Yeah, and they were lovely to work with. Very like scrappy. We were in this like shared community game dev space. So there was just people making games all over the place. And that was also very inspiring and also loud. There were no walls. It was just one big open space. So that was intense. And then I got a job doing narrative from a party for another Montreal studio. And so that's how I kind of hopped over from community management into narrative. That was just like, you're a writer. Do you want to try this? And I was like, are you sure? And yeah. And then since then, I've just been doing game narrative, mostly just by, again, meeting people at conferences and parties. Like, I am the kind of person who will run up to somebody who I think is cool and be like, should we be friends? Can we be friends now? And they're like, I mean, I guess, sure. And that led to me meeting the CEO of Alchemy. I was just like, we should be friends.
Hell yeah.
And then I saw him like at a later one and he was like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, looking for work. And he was like, well, guess what? And I didn't think he was serious until he contacted me like a few months later.
Wow.
And that's one of the jobs I'm doing now. And then another person who also worked at Alchemy, who left shortly after I joined, went to go and work on Hello Kitty Island Adventure. And I didn't know until she contacted me a year later and was like, Kate, I need help. Do you want to come help? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So like not very traditional, like basically no interviews in any of them, which is nuts. Like I just met people at parties, made friends with them, and I had a portfolio. Obviously, I'm not just like Nepo babying my way into jobs. Like I'm like, well, if you want to hire me, like here's what my work looks like. You know, I'm doing like game jams and making stuff on my own. And evidently like a combination of like being at least okay at writing and being like really friendly, I guess.
That's such a cool story. It sounds like
yeah.
it was all really natural. It was all like meeting cool people and then opportunities happened to pop up. You were owning your craft as a writer. You were also doing game jams. Like it kind of feels like this perfect storm, and you've done so. Ooh, oh my gosh, I'm gonna knock my microphone over. You've done so much, and I don't know to the extent that you would consider yourself kind of a generalist, and I mean that very much as a compliment. But when you look back at your career, what moments have made you the most proud?
I mean, oh God, this is horrible, but I had a therapy session the other day where my therapist made me bring in a bunch of printed out compliments that people had given me over the years. And it was deeply uncomfortable. I'm British. I don't do well with compliments. And he made me read all of them out. And I was like, ugh. But it sort of reminded me of all the times that people didn't have to be nice to me or like me or seek me out. And those are the times that I sort of treasure the most. It's not necessarily when I get like, I don't know, awards. I don't win awards, but like if I did, I'd be like, that's really cool. But it's when my friends and people I respect specifically say, hey, I really like your work. That's like, like there are, it's mostly other game devs, my friends, but like there are people who I'm like, I respect your work so much. And you've come to me and you're respecting my work. You can't do that. I respected you first, and also you're better at this. But that means a lot to me, you know. Awards would also be nice, don't get me wrong. Yeah.
There is something special about someone whose work you appreciate and someone whose work means a lot to you and has touched your spirit in some way, saying that to you.
Yeah.
Like that's a different kind of special, I think.
It's the closest I can get to complimenting myself, a thing that will never happen. Because if it's someone who's made something I like, liking my stuff, I'm like, well, I like you and I like your opinion, and your opinion is that I'm cool. Therefore, I have to like the fact that you like me. You know?
There's a lot of talking your way into that.
Yeah. It's hard to explain, but yes.
On the topic of writing, game writing means a lot of things. I'm curious what kind of game writing has been your favorite. Would it be something like working on branching quests, or specifically working on dialogue, or doing UI writing or item descriptions, or something else? Because anything that is written in a game that a player can read has hopefully touched or been touched by a writer.
Good question. What I do enjoy, I think, is item description, which I don't get to do a lot because a lot of games don't have item descriptions for various reasons. But when I get to do it, it's fun. It's a very fun thing because it has such strict limitations. It has a really short word count most of the time because you're dealing with a line that's like this long. You can't write a story. You're not writing Dark Souls most of the time, right? You have to do something that is both informative and hopefully also entertaining. And so that's really fun. The last item descriptions I did, I had a self-imposed rule that they could be 2 or 3 words each. So I had to make really good, really tight jokes. And that was very difficult, but also I did it to myself, so I can't complain. I also really like writing dialogue. That's the bulk of my job. It is difficult because the player, you can't decide what they're saying most of the time. I was having a little rant about this to my partner, like literally yesterday, where I was like, you know, like, unless you're playing a game where the character, like Solid Snake, is a character and you're just kind of driving him around, most of the time the player wants to express themselves in dialogue. And that is so hard to do in games because you can't have that many options. It's just not feasible. And there will always be at least one player who wants to say the opposite of what a normal person would say just because they can, because it's video games. And there are very few games that manage to like balance that. But it is really interesting writing dialogue for other characters that aren't the player, because they get to be entirely themselves, you know? And how can that be expressed in their dialogue and the things they say and do? And you also have to work within constraints like no cutscenes because it's an indie game and we can't afford cutscenes. So you have to do everything just in text and maybe some animations or some like facial changes. And it's just really interesting. I don't think there's any other writing discipline that is anything like writing dialogue for games. It's very fun.
I didn't even think about the distinction between writing for a player character and writing for an NPC, being the fact that an NPC is, at least from a writer's perspective, a fleshed out character, in that you probably have like character sheets for them.
Sometimes it's
at
in my
least
head.
something. There's some North
Yeah.
Star, regardless of like where it's written
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. There's some North Star for who the character is. But
Hmm.
I had never thought about the fact that, yeah, when you're writing a character that is being played by someone, especially if there are dialogue options, and if those dialogue options will impact the narrative, which I'm of the opinion that they should. Maybe you disagree with me, but it falls kind of flat when as a player you pick something and then it doesn't have an impact on the conversation or on the narrative. But I never even thought about that, of thinking about, well, putting myself in the shoes of the player. What options would the player want in front of
You
them?
have to like think about like, okay, what would every
Yeah.
potential player in the world do in this scenario? And how do I boil that down to like 2 or 3 choices
Mm.
realistically? But I do, one of my favorite things that is kind of like a thing within a thing is writing branching dialogue that doesn't branch, because that way I
Mm.
get to kind of have my cake and eat it too. I get to make the player feel like they're making impactful decisions, but they're not, and I don't have to change anything, because that's one of the
Mm.
thing with branching dialogues is it spirals out of control. It
Mhm.
just gets
Mhm.
like exponentially bigger the more stuff branches. So, for example, in Hello Kitty Island Adventure, you can say things, but we can't have branching because that's the way the game system works.
Mhm.
It was invented before either of the writers got there, so we can't change it. So basically, you can say 2 to 4 things, but it doesn't even change what the character says next. So one of my favorite things to do is find 2 to 4 things that the player can say that are all very different,
Mhm.
but the character responds the same.
Mhm.
It's really hard to do, but when you get it right, people are like, "Whoa, did I just find branching dialogue?" It's like, "No, you didn't. All of these things have the same response. You just can't tell."
Mhm.
Ha 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 ha! I've tricked you.
I was going to say there are, I can think of many instances in Final Fantasy 14
Yeah.
where in the main scenario quests, it you know, every player is going to experience the same
Mhm.
dialogue, and oftentimes I've compared notes with other people
Mhm.
who play the game where it's like, oh, what response did you get? And even if it is the same response from the character, I do
Mhm.
like the agency as a player of being able to
Yeah.
express my personality in the way that I say yes, or in the way that I say no, or in the way that I say whatever, you know,
Yeah.
is the option.
That's also really interesting. I could talk about player agency for like hours,
Mm.
because I think it's the thing that makes games the most interesting. It's the thing
Yeah.
nothing else has is the sense of agency and like customization and being
Mhm.
able to express yourself in a very specific way. And like, how can we do that without killing ourselves with all the writing we have to do?
Mhm.
I don't have an answer, but I try.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's very difficult to account for. On the item descriptions bit, if you
Mhm.
have not played
Oh,
Pacific Drive has some of the most incredible item description writing. This is such a
interesting.
niche
Do
topic,
you
but
know who did it?
uh, I know one of the writers who was on the show actually a few months ago, who's a friend of mine,
Cool.
Paul Dean, who is
Oh, I know Paul.
fabulous writer.
Friend
Paul is
Paul.
incredible.
Yay.
Yeah, just and this is actually, we spoke about this as Paul was recording the show a few months ago with me, where I was like, there were some really Paul coded jokes in those item descriptions.
Yeah. People keep sending me screenshots of Hello
Incredible.
Kitty being like, "Was this you?" And I'm like, "I don't remember, but it sounds like me. So maybe. I don't know." I love that. I love that you can like
Yeah.
see a person that you know within the writing. That's so
Yeah.
lovely. Also,
Yeah.
yay, Paul.
Yay, Paul. Paul is the best. Paul is truly just so wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, can we switch gears
Yes.
and talk about narrative design?
Absolutely.
Because so I had another writer, narrative designer on last month's episode, Anna Webster, who is fabulous as well.
Yay.
Just the loveliest. All these people, I could just sing everyone's praises forever and ever. And we spoke about, you know, the difference between writing and narrative design. Um, but if you'd like, we can, if you want to give your take on kind of what the difference is, feel free. But I wanted to ask, what is the trickiest part about narrative design that often needs more attention than folks
Mm.
realize?
I could give you a million different answers, and I think they would all be correct. The thing that's been on my mind recently, as part of the creative process in general, is that when you're doing narrative design, there is no story answer. You're like, well, what happens to the protagonist next? And it's like, I don't know. What happens? Like, is there a dragon that eats them? Or do they have a heartfelt conversation with their estranged father? Like, I don't know. It could be either of those. It could be a third thing. It could be literally anything. And sometimes I'm like, how does anyone finish a project? Because you have like a smorgasbord of any story beat imaginable in front of you. And like, how do you pick the right one that sort of touches on themes while also being interesting, while also furthering the plot, while also introducing new characters? Like, you have to do all of these things. And I sometimes I'm like, I don't know how anyone ever finishes anything, because like, how do you know when someone's had enough like emotional development within a story that you're like, well, that's it, that's all they do, end of story. So like, I think my solution to that is writers' rooms as much as possible, which is not really possible within an indie game setting because that's expensive. You have to have at least 2 writers, ideally more for a whole room. Like 2 writers doesn't really make a writer's room. I've been in 2 writers' rooms, and a lot of the time we sit there going, I don't know. So I think, yeah, like a lot of the time we don't know the answer, and having one writer to come up with the answer is not as good as having a team that can bounce ideas off each other. They get like exponentially faster and more creative the more of them there are. I guess within a point, like, you don't want like 20. That's too many writers. Don't hire that many writers. But yeah, like collaboration, brainstorming needs to be more of a thing in the industry. I think I would love more of that personally.
Yeah, I mean, different perspectives coming into a room to throw ideas at the wall like spaghetti and seeing what sticks is so fun. It's also just fun. Like, does it lead to better outcomes? Yeah, but it's also just fun.
Yeah, I've tried also to do it without like writers, and it's not quite as easy because like their brains, like if you've got artists, like they're really good at art, they're not so good at narrative design, and I'm not good at art, so it, works out. But bringing people into a writer's room that aren't writers, like, A, you're taking away from the thing they're supposed to be doing. Like, you're taking job hours away from them and everything else gets slower as a result. And B, it's a little harder to kind of get into that flow state because you're working in different disciplines, and it doesn't always, like, if you get writers together that are on the same wavelength, it can go really fast and it can build momentum. Whereas if you have to kind of teach people like what you're looking for in a writer's room, it's a lot more difficult of a process. So there's no real replacement for a writer's room with writers, which sucks because I've never worked with like more than one writer at a time. So the dream.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe on that note, what is your creative process? How do you what are the things that you do that get you the most inspired?
I wish I knew. In some ways, like my creative process is like a cat that I can never find when I need it. You know what I mean? You're looking for your cat and you're like, I've looked everywhere. And it turns out they're like under the fridge or something. Like my creative process can feel like that. I'm looking for it and I'm like, please, I need to write this thing. And it's just off doing something somewhere. So I try to coax it out with, I guess, the equivalent of cat treats, which is consuming and mind emptying. Consuming is about just like reading stuff, watching stuff, going to see plays, that kind of thing. Just like absorbing other people's creative stuff and letting it filter down. Like a lot of the stuff I write is inspired quite heavily by things that I've watched. Like there's a little bit of Avatar The Last Airbender in everything I write because it's got such good like character personality-ness Like it's got very interesting character writing. And emptying my brain is just like going for a walk, doing the groceries, like stuff that does not take up any of my creative brain. So I can kind of leave it to do its own thing, to percolate for a little bit. And then when I come back to it, I'm like, are you ready to write? It's like, yeah, I had a nap, you know? And like generally that works. It's worked for me so far. I haven't had writer's block in like a while, but I'm also writing for other people. So writer's block is like not really a thing because someone else is always telling me what to do. Whereas in my own creative projects, like, I don't know, I haven't been doing them much recently. So I don't know what I do when I get stuck on them.
That's fair. I feel like I also don't really get writer's block. But I do think that inspiration and creativity are a muscle. Mm-hmm. And so in the same way that you have your consuming and mind emptying, a lot of that's movement for me. So I have a little stationary bike at home. I try to get a workout in many times a week. And it's either my time to just like be on there and listen to music. And because I also do audio engineering, I'm like listening for very specific things. I listen to music differently now. I'm like, oh, they mix this in this way, or they put this vocal in this ear, but then it kind of moves at this point. Or it's the time that I'll sit down and like watch a podcast or something, which is more. It's not music, so it's in a way it's mind emptying, but I also meditate, and yeah, I think that push and pull is important for me, and also like the physical movement is also very important for me. Can we switch gears?
Yes,
a little bit again. Like really, really switching gears. So you have worked in VR as well. I have worked in VR as well. And that to me was a very different experience in development. How was that experience different from other projects you've worked on? And what kind of new considerations come into play that you have to think about when you're writing for VR?
So with pretty much all of my jobs, I will write something and then someone will come back and be like, "Hey, that doesn't exist in the game. Like you've mentioned this thing, but actually that thing doesn't exist in the game." So like with Hello Kitty, it's like mentioning meat and it's like, "Oh, we don't have meat in Hello Kitty Island Adventure." And I have to be like, "What?" For some reason or another, there's no meat in the game.
All right.
I guess because they're all animals and that would be weird. But there's a fish
I
guy
didn't even
and
think
he
of
thinks
that.
it has fish, so I don't know. Anyway, but with VR, it's like a whole different set of like, we can't talk about that. The characters in the VR game I'm working on don't have legs, so I can't make any leg jokes. We also, man, that's not really VR related, but we decided to set this in like an alternate universe, so I can't mention like France. We have an item called French fries, and we're like, we can't call it French fries. There's no France. That's not VR. It's just a random thing about the game. The play testing is really interesting. I basically had to learn how to play VR games well because there's not really a whole lot of time for like, oh God, Kate, this is how the controller works, It's got hand tracking instead of like the normal VR controllers that are quite intuitive. Hand tracking isn't intuitive, weirdly, despite it being hands. The picking stuff up is intuitive, but there's like a lot of distance grabbing stuff because in VR games you generally can't move because it makes people throw up. So you have to kind of get used to not being able to move in a video game, which is very odd at first because that's the main thing you do in most video games is moving. So playtesting was like a huge learning curve for me. In terms of writing, there's a few things that you have to learn with VR, which is that it's weird if someone's talking to you and you're not looking at them. So there has to be a lot of like eye tracking stuff. Like obviously I don't build the eye tracking stuff, but the dialogue has to be a lot snappier because also people are usually standing up when they're playing video games in the VR headset. So you can't like be like blah 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 because people are like, my legs hurt. So everything has to be short. It has to be snappy. It can't reference legs. It generally has to be while you're looking at someone. You can't interrupt. Like it's a multiplayer VR game as well, so you can't interrupt the players having a conversation. there's like a lot of interesting things to learn.
Mm,
And I'm probably not even thinking of some of them because I'm like so used to it at the moment.
mm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
cool.
that's so different. Yeah, VR for me was very different in that,
Yeah,
like, it is very easy to get overstimulated in VR as well because it is
yeah,
so immersive. It's
yep,
very,
and
very
it's
immersive.
in
And
your
so,
face.
yeah, yeah. And so I was doing sound design and I was like, oh, we need to pull back actually on how
Yeah,
much there is in here. And it was kind of this like forest setting. And I was like, oh, we can't have too many like wind sounds or bug sounds or bird sounds or
yeah,
whatever because it's so, so, so immersive. Um, yeah, it's fascinating working in VR. And yeah, to your point, like I get quite ill after a certain amount of time of having the VR
yeah,
headset on and you take it off and you're like, oh my goodness, what planet am I on?
yeah.
um, Switching gears once again,
Mhm,
if that's okay. You worked on narrative proc gen in the past.
mhm. Yeah.
Could before I ask three questions at the same time, could you first start off by telling us what procedural generation is? And then we
I feel
can
like
we can
I
dig
should
into
have
it a bit.
gotten a definition written up because now I'm just gonna have to like make one up on
That's
the
okay.
spot and
You can just
probably
pull
get
one
it
up and I can
wrong.
edit it out.
That is
No
true,
one
but
needs to know.
I wanna see what I can do. Like, one of my friends is, like, a PhD in proc gen, and I hope he's not watching this because 'cause I'm sorry. This is not going to be accurate, but procedural generation is used in a lot of different things in games. It is basically following a set of rules to define what it should generate next. So, can I think of an example off the top of my head? No, but like random generation is often procedural generation. Like actual random generation would have a lot of really annoying things. Like when you have actually shuffled music, it tends to play the same song in like three times in a row because that's what randomness is.
Mhm.
True randomness is repetitive and annoying, but like a sort of smart shuffle makes sure that songs don't play twice in a row and make sure like the genres are a little bit mixed up. And so that's kind of what procedural generation is that you give it a set of rules, you tell it what you want to generate, and then it follows those rules in order to generate something. So if you were procedurally generating a dungeon, you would say, okay, this room that I'm in has one door. So what I need is for the next room to also have a door in the same place so I can walk into it, and
Mm.
then also to have at least one more door so I can leave it again, unless you're making dead ends, I guess. Um, Narrative procedural generation, same thing, but with words. You might be familiar with Markov chains, which is just predictive text, really. You've started writing a sentence, you've written, I'm going to go to the, and your phone is like, well, hey, you normally say mall after this, the rest of this sentence. You love going to the mall, so I'm going to suggest mall. I'm also going to suggest shops because other people say shops when they say I'm going to go to the. And then I'm going to suggest toilet because also some people say I'm going to go to the toilet. Um, and so it gives you those options, and you're like, I wasn't going to say any of those. I was going to say the outside. I'm going to go to the outside. A perfectly normal thing to say. But what Markov chain is doing is following a set of rules to guess what word is going to come next. And narrative procedural generation can be like that, or it can be one of the ways I do it, which is like sentence parts that are strung together like this. So you would have like, I'm going to go to, and then the second half could be the shops, or it could be the movies, or it could be, I'm going to go outside. So there's no the there, right? That's why you've split it like this. So you can sort of change that as you want. And then you use that to string together procedurally generated sentences where you've given it all the rules, you've given it all the sentence chunks, and you're saying, well, you know what to do. String them together in an order I wouldn't be able to think of. And then it does. And usually the result is wacky and absurd. Was that a good explanation?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. What if you're working on a game and there is, you've decided there's going to be narrative proc gen in here.
Yeah.
What complexities come into play? Because
Mm.
I feel like one would really have to think about the boundaries and the bounds that one is playing within in order to get it right for the player.
Yeah. you have to work within a specific frame that suits procedural narrative. So the one game I've actually released that has procedural narrative is a game where it's okay if stuff doesn't make sense, because that's kind of the joke of the game. The game is called, I can never remember the title, it's so long. Mr. Mayor tells your fortune, recounts a story, and offers you snacks is, I think, the full title. And it's procedural narrative because basically he picks 3 random tarot cards and then says 3 completely unconnected fortunes based on those that don't make any sense, which is kind of sometimes like tarot cards. Like, yes, the fortune you get is tied to the card, but you can make basically anything tied to the card if you're explaining it well enough, you know? So I think that was really fun. And then he tells you a story which has gaps in it, like time passing gaps. So the story doesn't need to be entirely linear. It is much harder to write something that makes sense with proc gen narrative. You have to be like very constrained with it. And it takes so long that you might as well just do normal narrative at that point. It also is basically impossible to do if you have localization or voiceover, because if you do proc gen sentences, it's going to be changing like a word or half the sentence. And how do you pass that to localization? Because some languages need to know what the first and the second half of the sentence are until before they can translate the whole thing. So it doesn't really work for like any kind of game with a budget. But for game jam games, it's really cool. And I hope people sort of look into it more, play with it more.
Where my head went when you were describing what it is was, I remember growing up and you could buy books where it was like you fill in the word and
Like Mad
you
Libs?
Mad Libs, and you
Yeah.
pick the words first, and it just tells you
Yes.
like put a random verb here, or put a noun here, or put an adjective
Yeah.
here, or put whatever here.
Mhm.
And then it basically creates a story for you. That's kind of where my brain went as you were explaining.
Yeah. My partner has a game that I can't remember what the game was called. It was like some educational kids game where you would take like, there was a sentence and you would Mad Lib stuff into it, and it would then read it out in this very robotic voice where it would be like, my teacher was in his red car, or something like that. I don't know. And that's kind of what procedural generative narration is going to sound like. Like, you're never going to get it to sound human and fluid. So it does end up kind of looking like Mad Libs. There are ways to sort of smooth over the cracks so people don't know it's Mad Libs. Like, I made a lot of Twitter bots with procedural narrative dialogue, whatever you want to call it. And people thought I was writing all of them, and I was like, oh no, I've lied. I've lied to these lovely people. But basically, the way to smooth over the cracks is just to do a lot of work in joining stuff together. So it'll be like, one of the Twitter bots I made was pleasant subtweets. That's what it was called. I don't know if it still exists. I probably not. But people were doing a lot of like crappy subtweets where they were just like, I think this person, we all know who they are, is terrible. And I was like, what if there was a version of this where we complimented people and never said who we were complimenting? So it was
That's so
like,
sweet.
I think you're compliment 1, compliment 2, compliment 3. So it would be like, I think you're brave, smart, and stupidly handsome. And then other days it would say like, I think you're tall, tall and stupidly handsome. You know, like sometimes it got wacky. And that was part of the fun. And then if people didn't know that I was using procedural writing, they'd be like, what? Did you break? So yeah, that's one of the downsides, is that sometimes it says stuff that like you can't test for because there's so many ways it could go. Most of the time it looks human though, so that's pretty cool.
That's just fun. That's just
Yeah.
Mad Libs.
Yeah, it's like
It's fun Mad
Mad
Libs.
Libs. Yeah.
I love that. Before we get into my last question, I don't know if you've played Dragon Age Inquisition.
A lot. A few times. Yeah.
That game is so okay. That game is so good.
Yeah.
That game is so good. I've been wanting to do another playthrough at some point this year. I can't even fathom the amount of work that went into not only all of the branching dialogue for every single background for every single character. So for context, for anyone who's played it, this was I think I should have played I should have played them in order. I played Inquisition first, and then I played Origins, and then 2.
Yeah.
And I played a Dalish elf mage.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Not knowing that people don't like Dalish elves in the context of that world, or mages in the context of that world. But the dialogue choices that I had were so fascinating because, you know, people are like, oh, you're the Herald of Andraste. And as a Dalish elf mage, a Dalish elf mage does not believe in your religion and does not believe in Andraste. And so that's how I played it. I was like, I don't even know. Well, I didn't know who Andraste was. So I was like, I don't know who Andraste is. I can only imagine, you know, if you played as this type of character, kind of what you would get, the different combinations that you might get for, you know, the role that you're playing or your origin or whatnot. Like that to me is like peak complexity in terms of narrative.
Fun. Like I don't like writing branching dialogue, but I do like, I haven't written a lot of games like this, but when you have like a character's background that can influence either the things you can say or the things people can say to you. The other game that does this really well is Pentiment, where you can sort of decide things about your character. He's the same guy, but you can be like, he went to university, or he was a monk and he speaks French, or he speaks Latin. And it opens new interesting branches to you. Those I might refer to as passive branches, which I think are much more interesting to write than active branches where the player is choosing to go down them. Inkle is really good at this kind of like passive branch stuff where like options will be open to you if you have like done something or been something. But also so David Gator is like the main writer of Dragon Age Inquisition and like one of my personal narrative heroes. And I want to change my answer about the thing I'm most proud of and say the time where he retweeted an article I wrote about Dorian from Dragon Age Inquisition.
Oh my God, yes.
And said something
Love
about
Dorian.
it. And I was like, he's read my work. I think I didn't come up with the title of this piece, but I think it was called "My Dragon Age Boyfriend Broke My Heart When He Told Me He Was Gay."
That is a fabulous title.
That is exactly what happened.
That is a fabulous title.
People got so mad, like normies, to be clear, not gamers, but like people who don't play games who were like, okay, loser, it's not real. But I was writing
Dorian, though. What they don't understand is it's Dorian.
I love him.
I love Dorian.
Also, the gamers were like, you didn't know he was gay? I'd spent like 30 hours with this man, and I've been like, we're gonna get married. And everyone's like, girl, did you not pick up on it? And I was like, no.
I didn't either, if it makes you feel any better. It went completely over my head.
He flirts with you like nonstop. That's why I was so into him. I was like, ah. And then like he's like, oh, sorry, I'm not into women. And you're just like, what was the flirting? And he has this amazing line of dialogue that I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember. But you can basically be like, why were you flirting with me? That's really like shitty of you. Like, how dare you? Like, you strung me along and you've broken my heart. And he says, I'm really sorry. That's just how I am. I can stop if you'd like. And you can be like, no, don't stop. I still like it. Or you can be like, yeah, don't do it anymore. And I love Dorian so much because also another thing that I wish games would have more, he's not player sexual. So player sexual is pretty typical in games. Every character wants to date you or would date you given the option. So a character that like is straight will be like, oh, I guess I'm gay. I never realized it. You know, they have this kind of like coming out. That happens in Stardew Valley, I think, with Alex, who's like, I've never dated a guy before, which is cool. That's a valid way of doing it. But having a character that has a preferred sexuality takes away player agency in that they can't date that person, but is more realistic. That is what life is like. People have preferred sexualities, and it makes them a more interesting character. Like Vivienne, you can't date Vivienne. I think she's single. You can be like, hey, do you want to hook up? And she's like, no, my husband died and I'm still sad about it. And also, I just don't want to date anyone. Like, it's not personal. I really like you, but not in that way. And that's so interesting to me. It would be much more boring if she was like, I'm still hung up on my husband, but you fixed me.
Yeah.
We
I
can be in
totally
love.
agree. I totally agree. The writing in Inquisition, like that to me is one of the most well-written games from a dialogue perspective, from a lore perspective, from a item description perspective. It is so rich in its world, and it knows what it is, and the characters know who they are as well. It's
I could
Inquisition is so
never
good.
do Dragon Age writing. I mean, if they offered, I would. I would say yes. I would figure it out. But there's so much lore, and I don't understand most of it.
That's the other piece I was going to bring up, is that there's the complexity in the branching dialogue that can get really complex, and then there is complexity in the amount of lore. Because then when I played Origins, I was like, oh, I understand Grey Wardens now and Archfiends. And then I played 2 and
Hawk. And
I was like, I don't know, who's Hawk? I ended up playing Default Hawk because Default Hawk shows up in Inquisition. So I was like, I'm playing Default Hawk because this is who I know Hawk as. I love Hawk. Fabulous games. Just fabulous.
Even Origins, like, it's aged very poorly, but it has some incredible writing in it. Like, writing doesn't really age as fast as video game graphics do. So that's great. You know, you can have great writing in any
The
era.
writing is fantastic. Yeah, it really is. To wrap things up, I'm so glad that we went on this little Dragon Age tangent. To wrap things up, we spoke about your journey and how you got to where you are today. If you could give a piece of advice to younger Kate, what would it be?
I mean, as I guess I kind of touched on earlier, is to sort of stay put for a bit longer. I think in my 20s, I was very flighty, and I was like doing well enough in my career that people kept being like, what if you did this instead? What if you did this instead? But like, sometimes I think if I just sat where I was and kind of got more out of it, I think I would have got more out of it, you know, like, which is hard to say from where I am now because it did all end up working out. But like, I wish I'd worked in magazines for longer. It didn't pay well. In fact, it paid terribly, really, really terribly. But like, if I'd stuck around for a bit longer, I could have like learned a lot from a lot of really amazing people. Instead of just being like, I'm going to move on to video. It's the hot new thing, you know? Especially because magazines don't really exist so much. Like gaming magazines, there's basically just Edge left, and maybe a couple more. Like all the ones I worked on do not exist anymore. And like, I can't go back to magazines. They're not there, you know? So I would have liked to stick around a bit longer. But also to like have more faith in myself. I think that's a recent realization, is to sort of give myself more credit for the things that I'm good at, instead of being like, oh, it's all luck. I don't know what I'm doing. I think I probably do. Somehow.
Yeah. I love that. That's so heartfelt.
Therapy.
Yes.
It's good for you. Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much. Kate, thank you so much. Before we open it up for Q&A, this was so wonderful, but for folks who are watching the VOD or listening, if you're listening on podcasting platforms, that's all we've got for the core show. Kate, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you. As always, our socials will be in the description if you'd like to follow us on social media. Kate, would you like to tell the story of why your handle is your handle, or would you like to save that for another time?
I mean, I'll do it. It's embarrassing, but I'll do it. I had a blog when I was like, I don't know, 17, where I drew really stupid pictures, and being like, self-deprecating. I was like, if I call it How Not to Draw, then if the drawings are bad, I'll be like, that's because it's about how not to draw actually. And so I was like protecting myself from criticism in that way. And so I made myself a Twitter so it would like auto post my blog there. And then a few people followed me, and then I started like talking about games, and then more people followed me, and then I was like, well, I'm here already, so I guess I'll just stay here. And I've never changed my handle. I briefly wanted to. When I joined Xbox and was doing their video stuff, they were like, do you want to make a new account? And I was like, yeah, I want to be called Dr. Sausage after the hamster I co-owned with my friends, who was called Mr. Sausage because he looked like a sausage. And they were like, you can't call yourself Dr. Sausage. We can't do that. People will tear you apart. So I just kept to what I have now. I could have been Dr. Sausage. Can you imagine? Would have been a lot weirder, I think.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, you say how not to draw, but then you illustrated the bees that you have on your mug.
I did. Wait, I'll show them to the camera.
They're
There's a
very
little
cute.
bee on this handle that I think is
A little
actually quite
bee.
a good bee. And there's also, well, this is mirrored, so I don't know if anyone can tell. These are all bees as well. It
Bees.
says B and B. It looks like they say D, but it says B. It's a bee mug. It's covered in bees. And then I have 2 mugs on my desk. This is terrible. I didn't make this one.
No,
My
you're
partner
good.
did, but it's a cow.
Oh my god, yes. Yes.
Wow,
That's
so cute. And then I painted and whittled this matching cow. So we have a lot of cow, and there's also a painting up there of the same cow, but you can't really see it.
Oh
Lots
my
of
goodness,
cows.
yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much.
Good. Me too.
Bringing us back. That's all the time we've got for the show. Kate, thank you so much again. Our socials will be in the description if you'd like to follow us on social media. If you have any feedback or topics you'd like to see covered in the future, let us know. Kate, thank you so much again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll open it up for Q&A. We have a question. Kate, how do you convey impactful emotions in a more wholesome, relaxed game? I have almost zero experience working on narrative design for my own projects, but I wonder what constraints must be accounted for when, say, dealing with cuter characters.
I am a firm believer in you can get quite real even with cute stuff. I think about how Stardew Valley is considered a very wholesome, very cozy game, but it touches on like alcoholism and suicidal thoughts and parental abandonment, and so much like comedy, it has dark and it has light in it. The main thing with Hello Kitty, at least, which is a cute, wholesome, relaxed game, is that I can't get too real, because I can't say certain things because we're working with an IP that is well established, which in some ways is disappointing because other Sanrio media does get dark. Like, I highly recommend everybody watch the My Melody and Karomi show that's currently on Netflix. It's incredible. I'm not just saying that because I'm on the Sanrio payroll. It's really, really good. It's stop motion. It's beautifully animated, and it gets dark. Like, it goes to like imposter syndrome and like there's a lot of death in it. Surprisingly, and like jealousy and all this other stuff. And it is possible to touch on all that stuff in the game as well. And I often do. I try not to get too preachy, but I put a lot of myself into these games. So, oh, this is getting really real. But when I was writing Moonstone Island, a friend of mine passed away. And I found out like quite late that they had passed away. Like it had happened like months before. And I was in the middle of writing a date. And I just poured all my feelings into that date. Like, I wrote exactly what I was feeling, which was a lot of rage, a lot of unfairness, a lot of guilt, like all the natural things that happen when someone you know and love passes away, especially when Like, you find out about it well after the fact. And I poured all my feelings into it, and then I left the scene alone, and I came back to it like a week later when I was feeling a lot more settled. I'd been through all the stages of grief, and I looked at it and I was like, it's intense, but I actually think it's a really good scene. I think it is very true and real and heartfelt. I'm going to like chill it out a little bit. It's very ragey, but I'm going to keep everything I wrote in there. Like, my feelings are in there. And so if you date this character, they have this one scene where they're sort of talking about having lost a friend and how frustrated and angry and unfair like it all feels, because it's like, why? When someone passes away, you often find yourself being like, why? That's the bargaining stage of grief. And it's relatable, I think. I think the thing to remember is that emotions are relatable. There will be someone out there who reads that and goes, oh my God, that's how I feel. Like, either you've put it into words, or that's exactly how I would put it too. And you're reaching out a hand to somebody and saying, hey, you're not alone. And they can feel that. And you, the writer, can also feel that. You can feel like you've connected to somebody. And so when I'm writing impactful emotions, as you put it, I'm trying to write my emotions. I'm trying to write truth. I'm trying to be vulnerable. This also came up in therapy last week, is like, vulnerability is so important in the creative process. That's why we create, is to share a little bit of ourselves with other people. And you shouldn't shy away from that. I'm going to make my therapist listen to this podcast. Hi. And he's going to be like, I understand you so well now. Vulnerability, yeah, it's why we make things. It is about connecting to other people. It is about showing parts of ourselves to other people, and knowing that those people have the same part and that we're not alone. I think keeping it real is so important. You can write a sort of preachy, like, hey, always be respectful to your parents kind of message, and it won't hit the same as if you put something you truly believe in or something you've been through into the game. That was a really heavy answer, but I hope it helps.
But it's real. But I'm so sorry, first of all. But
yeah,
it's
real
real.
bummer. I'd like to think that a piece of them is in the game. They were non-binary as well, and that character is non-binary that talks about all this stuff. And that felt very like poetic in a way. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautifully immortalizing them.
Yeah.
In art.
It's all we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of music in the same way, of like, you leave a piece of you in everything that you create and everything that you write and everything that you touch.
Yeah.
Because you can't, like, I can't write something without feeling something. There's no way.
Yeah. I love that though. I've never done music, but I can imagine how it must feel. And that sounds so special.
I often say this, and I feel like it comes across not in the way that I want to express it, but I feel like I hear my emotions more than I feel them in a way. Like when I feel something very deeply, I hear the emotion. I hear either a song or a melody or something. And that kind of anchors me in the emotion. Wait, I've never met someone who has the same thing.
Like, I can't cry at movies. I've never cried at a movie, and apparently that's weird, but I do cry at music. Wordless music. It makes me feel things that like stories don't. And I think that's so cool and weird. But I always have a song in my head, like always. And it usually reflects how I'm feeling or what I'm thinking about. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, same person. Yep.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
See, we're not alone in the world.
We're not alone.
But
you're right. I think art, the reason why we create is to be connected and to share our human experiences, and and to find catharsis within ourselves and synthesize our experiences, and hopefully if someone else has some level of exposure to the art, that it can help them move on or be brave or find catharsis or whatever it might be, or find joy or remember something that happened that you know, maybe is bringing them comfort. Like that to me is anyway, I love making art. Love it.
Yeah. We're so lucky to get to do this.
Oh yeah. I count my lucky stars every morning, truly.
Yeah.